Hi, everyone. Tom Christie here, d20play. I got David
Hey, folks.
and John with us.
Hello.
And we were just talking about, is D&D looking at all these other systems that are coming out? Because there's $1 million Kickstarters left and right, it feels like. Knave's at over $500,000. And Shadow Dark was 1.5 million, I think it was. We have Tales of the Valiant we're going to be looking at today here in their core playtest packet number 3. And that's going to be probably a really big Kickstarter. And are any of these ideas getting looked at by TSR, or sorry, Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro?
How old are you?
And we were just talking about how the corporate involvement and how dangerous that can become if it gets too involved. It's good if it's like there for the money, there for the business, but once it starts trying to lead the ship, then you might have a little bit of trouble. And I just finished reading the Ben Riggs book. Tell us about what it said in there, David, about too much product or too varied a product.
Well, there was one problem that TSR appeared to have had during the 90s when they fell into bankruptcy. And of course, and some of the folks at TSR who at the time running the show, like Jim Ward, will tell you this is balderdash, but there are multiple sources who say that it is true that at the time, there were a number of TSR products, these box sets and so on, that were so lavishly produced that they were costing more money to print than they could sell them for in stores. And apparently the strategy was to make lose money on every box, but make it up in volume. But obviously that's not going to work. But it does show that there was a certain arrogance from the management level where they were not really communicating with the folks down in the trenches and telling them what kind of the information that they needed about costs and profits and sales to make good business decisions that would have led to a healthy company instead of the one that on the verge of bankruptcy got bought out by Wizards of the Coast.
And it was Lisa Stevens that did a lot of that research, right? It was the lead for Paizo now.
Yeah, she was
right.
One of the key players in the buyout.
That's a great book. I listened to it on tape over the last couple of days, and my wife, who's not a big gamer, she loved it too from the business aspects of it and all that kind of stuff that it went through. So definitely recommend that book. Ben Riggs, Slaying the Dragon, I think is the name of it.
Absolutely. Very, very entertaining read.
Yeah.
Even if you're not particularly interested in the history of the game. And if you are, it's just completely enrapturing.
Yeah. We got our first comment here. I want Shadow Dark. My Shadow Dark videos are doing like gangbusters. There's a lot of interest in Shadow Dark. I love the system. I mean, it's just so simple and to the point. I love a lot of things about it. Now, this is not Shadow Dark, what we're going to look at today. This is more 5e turned up a little bit. So let's start digging in a little bit to playtest packet number 3. I have it here on the screen. Let me blow this up full screen for us. So it says the monsters in this packet are slightly more challenging than standard 5e monsters. We'll look at how they did that in a little bit. And the first part of the packet is kind of like the boilerplate in the front of the DMG. A lot of this wording is the same or very similar to the DMG. There's some new things in here, some new nuggets of wisdom, or I don't know, wisdom, but some new changes in here. So rather than having alignments for every monster, even if it says usually this alignment or anything like that, they don't have alignments, but the ones that are really tied into an alignment do have a tag, so that spells that work on that alignment will work on them. So angels have good and law tags, chaos has chaos tags. One area, I noticed there's I think they changed psychic damage to void damage. So we'll see that in a couple of monsters. They call it void damage. They have void speech. And they throw in these little GM wisdom nuggets here and there. Monsters with a swim speed.
Let me ask you guys a something that surprised me in Wolfgang Bauer's notes on this particular playtest. He was talking about hit points, something they mentioned there on the page, and talking about how low-level monsters, a lot of DMs seem to be frustrated that they don't have enough hit points for some reason or another. And that surprised, and talking about DMs who are house ruling additional hit points for those low-level monsters. And that kind of surprised me because that's not something I've heard or seen about, though I do recognize that low-level monsters tend to not stick around for more than a hit. Did that make any sense, or can you put some perspective on that comment from the notes?
It's not a thing I've felt either at the table running it. I haven't felt like the low level stuff, but the higher level stuff, frankly, I often wish would stick around longer. But goblins and kobolds, they're supposed to be popcorn, aren't they?
Yeah,
kinda,
I agree. They should be.
are.
There's a couple of points in here, and that's a really good one, Dave, that I noticed that it felt like it was written from a point of view of a DM who was getting beat up by his players, and maybe not from the viewpoint of, hey, it'd be more fun if these things dropped, easy.
There's on the subject of hit points and stuff like that, and damage and things like that. I mean, one of the striking things in this is that they've gone all the way from having average damage and presenting that as an option if you're trying to speed up play. They're going all the way. We aren't going to show you the dice that represent a damage expression. Monsters are always going to do static damage. And so there's a lot of places where they seem to have just taken something that has been presented in the past as an option and made that choice for us. And I'm not sure I like that.
I agree. On
And
that.
at the same time, that while you're on the tags page, this is a thing that reminds me a lot of the alternative to alignment that D20 Modern had, where characters and NPCs had allegiances to values or ideas or social groups and stuff like that. And each being had 3 of them that were ranked, and that gave you this much more complex system for trying to understand that. And this is maybe less complex, but I do like that we can get to something that's a little less Facebook quiz sort of approach to what motivates people. It's a little bit more complex, a little bit more interesting.
Even if it's less memeable, huh?
Yes, even if it's less memeable.
About the static damage, I'm a fan of the static damage, and I use it unless there's just one die in the monster's hit point or damage formula.
That brings up a good point, Dave. It's like I like when I'm doing convention play to do it with the static damage, but I like a little bit of variability. So is there a way you can combine it such that all monsters did 1 die plus a number that just got bigger and bigger?
I love it.
Yeah, something like that maybe. Or you could also have the damage with a couple different numbers where you have a low, a medium, and a high, and you can say, I'm going to change the difficulty, and all the monsters in this area are going to do high damage, or something like that. So you can
that's
vary.
a cool idea.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay, so then here we come to stealth. So stealth is now sitting there in the stat block itself. We'll see that. And it's taken into account the monster's size, something that was not done in 5th edition, was done very much in 3rd edition. Just a little bit more realism creeping in. I don't know if it gains you a whole lot. It's just... I think 5th edition dropped a lot of things that were realistic but didn't matter that much. And this is definitely one of them, and that's coming back in a little.
I'm very happy to see stealth resolved as a DC versus a one roll for typically the PC looking for something.
Yeah,
that's so much more streamlined than some of the opposed roll stuff, and I think we're seeing a little bit of that change in the D&D play tests too. So yeah. I see that as a really welcome simplification.
Ability modifiers. This one's kind of a mixed bag for a couple of reasons. So you don't necessarily need the ability scores for hardly anything. So that's not a big deal that it shows just the modifiers, but it does not show skills or saves. So we'll get to like an adult red dragon where its saves are all gone, so its saves are much lower. Now they say they've modified some of the skill modifiers to account for that, and that makes it doubly hard for DM. It's like, did they account for it already, or should I add it in? So more importantly, the GM uses the proficiency bonus, or it uses these numbers to make a save or an ability check. And they can add whichever ability seems most relevant ability check, eliminating the redundancy of separate numbers for saves and skills. We'll look at it, and you can see like a dragon's got much lower saves in this version of the game. Although you could, on the fly, add proficiency bonus if you think you want to. You just don't have that information at your fingertips anymore to know if you should be, if that's what the dragon was designed for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then proficiency bonus. Oh, that's kind of what I was saying right here. Only for exceptional cases, since the ability modifiers and stat blocks often already have the proficiency bonus factored in. I don't know if often is the right word because very few of them did. So we'll look at that. Just a little mix up here on the table. It's not proficiency bonus in this table. It's XPs in this table. This is a new little twist. So monsters that are immune, resistant, and vulnerable, you'll see there's more of them in all these things. And if they're immune, they automatically save, can't be affected. If they resist, they can resist conditions now. Normally you just resist damage. And if you resist a condition, you have advantage on saves against it. And then vulnerable, you can be vulnerable to a condition, and then you have disadvantage on saves. I kind of like that. What do you guys think of that?
Seems like a good new addition to the toolkit.
Yeah, that works.
They rolled them all together into one line, all the conditions and damage types, and presented on one line on the stat block. Senses, keen was the old blind sight, night vision was the old dark vision. Little talk about how far you can see outside. Perception, just a little bit of talking about invisible creatures aren't just, completely hidden. They still have sound, they still have scent. Some new languages, machine speech and void speech. Telepathy is really unchanged. Okay, now this is interesting. So on this page we see go easy at first level, but we'll look at the monsters and they've all been beefed up at low levels. So I don't know
well
if they're following that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when we get to the very first monster, the animated armor, there are some ways in which it actually does go easier, though.
Yeah. PC level to monster CR comparison. I would like to see definitely something along the lines of what Mike has in what Teos and Mike and Scott Fitzgerald are working on in their monster book. Just more information. But of course, this is a monster manual, so really, I bet this is only here to help playtest, and this information will really be in their DMG. Yeah. Although in their Tales of the Valiant, they don't have a DMG, do they? We'll look at that in a second. I don't think they do. So maybe this is where that kind of information will live. Now, one new trait they have is Doom. So monsters have Doom points, some of them do, where they can basically give themselves advantage on an attack, force a PC to roll a save with disadvantage. Go ahead, John.
I really like the idea of this. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the language around it. I mean, it's essentially advantage for monsters, and why would we not just talk about giving them advantage or inspiration or something like that? Making it Doom, and especially the way it's going to get used, I think subtly reinforces an adversarial approach between DM and players. But mechanically, I think it's a cool idea. It lets you take some of the legendary stuff that the really big bosses get and salt that a little bit more into sort of middle tier monsters that are interesting. Like the Harpy has a Doom point. That's not exactly a boss monster. It's not something that would have legendary powers. It's a way to handle sort of daily abilities. But I'm looking at it thinking, okay, what are the conditions under which I might award a Doom point to? Is that something that happens when a character rolls a crit fail on a check or something like that on some circumstances. So I think that there's a lot of interesting ways to play around with that.
I like the sort of idea of a resource that lets monsters do their cool tricks. And I think they emphasize this in the playtest, that this is something that really lets you amplify the cool things. That's what's interesting about what a monster can do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little curious about why they decided to go with sort of a point basis instead of something else we've seen before, which is a triggering condition, like once they're bloodied. I know there's no bloodied in this game, but still flesh golems have something like that. Once they're bloodied, this happens, and sort of an automatic trigger. I guess Doom points do give DMs a little more flexibility, and perhaps they're easier to remember. Our friend Mike Shea was talking about having Doom points, legendary actions, legendary resistances, potentially lair actions. That gives DMs a lot of stuff to keep in mind and track, and they're all separate resources.
Yeah, we'll talk
It's
about
a
that.
lot.
They do have some triggers added on some of the monsters, so they're mixed in the Doom, the triggers, and yeah, I was kind of feeling the same thing on some of these monsters reading through this. Like, you're not going to necessarily harness all this. We'll see what you guys think when we get there. Melee ranged attacks. Okay, so damage is shown as a single number, and nowhere did I see what you do with crits other than you double them. I forget, in the basic playtest packet, do they double damage on a crit, or do they roll the dice extra?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. So if they said they double damage, then that's fine. That's clear. If they say they roll dice, then you need to say you're going to double this damage. That's not a roll dice. And then this optional rule is a little scary for high level parties. When a PC rolls a natural 1 in combat, or later a boss gains Doom, if you got 5 attacks around, that's a lot of chances for Doom versus 1 attack around.
Yeah.
All right.
They're going to be Doom machines.
Yeah. Variant rules. So here's the random damage table that you can use instead. Inexplicably, for some reason, they split it out to different sizes, even though it's supposed to do the same average damage. And it says the big sizes might do slightly more damage. Wouldn't they just have more damage on the base roll to start? I don't know. That's all the same. Okay, so let's get into some side-by-side here. Put this right here. And let's look at animated armor. So I like this little thing up here, the description of the armor. And everything has a description. I don't like that in a lot of cases it assumes actions by the party or actions by the creature. I like to keep the descriptions, basic, and the DM adds the actions or the players add the actions. But I like in general that they have that. So we see hit points got up a little bit. Stealth is the new thing that's added, and it's unchanged from before. Void is the same as Psychic, as far as I can tell. They've added a few immunities that seem to match, although they've added quite a few immunities to stun, so they must not like monks. There's a lot of monsters that have gained stun immunity. They have resistance to slashing. That's new. They gain vulnerable to acid. That's new. Keen, I like this wording a little better. It used to say blind beyond the radius. Now it says can't sense beyond the radius. Mm-hmm. Perception is actually better than it used to be for no given reason, because the wisdom's -4, although they must have added the proficiency bonus to it. And then strength went up 2 for no explicable reason.
Well, proficiency bonus there as well, probably.
Maybe, yeah. Although they didn't used to have anything that added their proficiency bonus to a strength check. Okay, so then I looked at their actions, and what I did for the actions here is I looked at the damage tables, and I forget where I got this. I think it was from something that Teos did, where they did a comparison of the monster or the DMG damage to what was actually in the monster manual and Volos. And so I'm taking the average damage. When I talk about if the average damage is high or low, I'm taking the average damage to the DMG, which is generally higher than any monster manual shows. or averages. So we would think if they're going to be beefing up the monsters a little bit, we should see them come from the average of that monster manual currently to near the DMG average. But we'll see if they do that or not. So where they're not doing that, I made it blue for weaker. And the only reason this happens is animated armor used to have a multi-attack,
Right.
and now it doesn't. It damage went up a little bit, so now it's doing an average of 7 damage, and a CR1 creature should do an average of 12 damage. So it used to be close, doing an average of 10. They added this bonus action here to repair it. So you'll see little extra actions for every monster. So yeah, my idea for how to, like, because people talk a lot about the challenge rating system being broken. It kind of is, kind of isn't, but every party's different. I've had parties that could take on twice as much challenge as other parties. And that's just style of play, experience, that kind of thing factored in.
Class makeup, yeah.
Yeah, class makeup. And so the DM shouldn't be beholden to, oh, I have to have the challenge rating system that works. They should have a challenge rating system that works across that spectrum of classes or parties. So I like the idea to have some sort of dial for the DM in the monsters. Now, the dial could be argued that, well, you just have more or less monsters.
Yeah.
And that's valid, but I also don't like a slog of a big, giant group of monsters because, that gets bad. A party that can take on twice as much challenge as a lower level party, I'd rather have them not fighting a whole bunch more monsters, just have the monsters be more powerful.
It does slow the game if you just add monsters.
Yeah. So my idea there for, instead of saying 7, say 7/10 or 5/7/10 or something like that. That's one idea. The other idea is all these little extra actions that they give, maybe make some of these optional. Say, hey, if you got an experienced party, here's some extra stuff you can add. John, you were going to say something about the animated armor?
Yeah. I mean, this is clearly designed with the value that we pointed out a minute ago, that take it easy on them at first level. This is more hit points, less damage. It's going to take longer to take down, but it's going to be less threat to the party while you're doing it. So this is, it's more barrier than it is threat.
Yeah.
To the party.
And in some instances, that can be significantly more hit points if the party's wielding a great axe and a great sword. And it's resisting all their slashing damage.
So it's resisting slashing damage.
Yeah.
It's repairing 5 hit points.
Yeah.
It gets below half every round. But it's really doing low damage.
Yeah. So it's definitely fulfilling what you said, David, about what their goal was. It's not a goal I necessarily like, to make the monsters last forever.
Well, this is a particular unique case because this is definitely, in most cases, a less interesting monster to fight than the original. And I see other cases, or most cases, where I think the monster that they've created for Black Flag is something that I'd rather see on my table versus the original.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. A comment here. Solving action economy equal give them more actions, not a happy face. Yeah. More and more. That's the thing I love about Shadow Dark. It's like, I was looking at Shadow Dark, looking at Pathfinder, looking at 5e, and there's like a spectrum of how far they take the action economy. Pathfinder to the extreme and Shadow Dark to the extreme the other way. And wow, does it make a fast game when it's only got one action. Okay, Flying Sword. So now the Flying Sword. Here's the challenge rating 1/4. Enemy. Hit points went up slightly. Stealth went up a little bit. Dex, interestingly, went up a point. So it doesn't have the Dex save it used to have, but it's better at other Dex stuff than it used to be. And its stealth you would think would be 13, but maybe they're giving small an extra +1. Again, immune to stunned, because monks suck, evidently. Resistant to piercing. Vulnerable to acid. It does more damage than it should. So a CR, which you don't need to do. I mean, at CR 0 to 1/2, you should be doing what's basically the DMG the monsters already do, the DMG. And 1/4 should be doing 5 damage. This is 5 damage, but they added, once you're below 10, it's making extra attacks. So now it's doing 10 damage. So just a little bit of a beef up. More bonus actions to manage. Now, I'm not saying it's all bad, right? I like a lot of the little things that they have for these extra actions are pretty cool if they're optional, I think. And what I'm not seeing is them beefing up the damage on the big monsters, and they're beefing it up on the small monsters, which is like the reverse of what I'd like to see. Bugbear. Let's do that. Bugbears. All right. So this one's got a little bit less armor class, a little bit more hit points, a little bit better strength. Damage ends up being kind of a mix because their base damage is doing 11 went up to 12, and at a CR1 they should be doing 12, so that's close to right on. But then they have their surprise attack that they didn't quite figure out right. Like they have it doing extra damage here, and they have it doing a stun down here. And then on their other monster, that's a bugbear, they talk about it doing damage and a stun. So I think their intent was damage and a stun. They just never updated this part of the stat block. Not a fan of monsters stunning characters. What do you guys think?
It can be such a drag.
Yeah, as a player. All right. Let's skip ahead to the big one. Tyrannosaurus Rex, it's right on the money for damage, but it doesn't do anything else. And it never did. But it was always doing extra. It always would stun players how much damage it does, which is actually right on average for its CR.
This was one where I wondered why the heck doesn't it have a Doom ability?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
An iconic monster. This is presented with so little flavor.
Yeah. Definitely a good candidate to add a little bit more. The fling's pretty neat, but a Doom or something extra would be good too. Okay, let's get to dragons. So the lair actions are all different. Maybe that's because the lair actions aren't in the SRD. I didn't go double check. They're similar, just all slightly different. Okay, adult red dragon. Let's compare the dragons here. We'll see a lot of these things in action. Chromatic red. Adult red dragon. Okay, so we have the evil tag versus it being chaotic evil before.
Mm-hmm.
We have hit points changed just slightly. I mean, that's trivial given their level. Their stealth is a little bit worse than it used to be. And it kind of makes sense that a huge creature could be that stealthy. But it looks like they dropped their stealth by 2 for being huge.
Mm-hmm.
Perception's not as good. It's down from, used to be 23, down to 20. CR went up from 17 to 18. And here you'll see the ability scores. So the ability scores, strength's the same. Dex is beefed up tiny bit, but they don't have a Dex save, which used to be +6. Con is the same, but they don't have a +13 con save. Now, if you're an experienced DM, you might know they should get their proficiency bonus, but it's really left up to the DM to know that, and a new one probably wouldn't. Tone is the same. Wisdom's beefed up partially, so they get half of the proficiency bonus added onto it. And then Charisma is the same. They have 3 Doom points, so 3 times they can give themselves advantage, 3 times they can cause disadvantage on a roll. I don't know if they can do that 3 times in the same round, if it's just free. I think it is just free, so they could do, in one breath, 3 people get disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty strong.
The weaker saves just puzzles me. It seems like against foes that are characters that are appropriate matches for this creature, all the saves are just going to be fails almost out of the gate. They're going to be relying on
their
legendary actions or legendary resistances.
It's going to burn through those more quickly.
Yeah.
And it's got slightly more hit points. So like the first failed save that wouldn't have been a fail will make up for that. I don't know. It's a weird math game. I don't see this really warranting the increase in challenge rating.
Oh, right. No, I don't know what. I guess the Doom they think makes it better. So we'll talk about the Doom here in a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so damage. Slightly less damage in piercing, more damage in fire, less damage in bludgeoning. Breath weapons recharging in 4 through 6 instead of 5 through 6. Damage is almost exactly the same, 66 versus 63. And here's where they're using a Doom in a way that I don't like that much. So if I were to run this dragon, it'd be doing 1.6 times this damage. So its breath weapon would do like 99 fire damage. And I don't kill parties. They all survive. And they're getting to use all their cool powers. They're getting to use their, evasion and their death ward. And, I go in there to an encounter and I'm like, oh God, this is going to wipe out the party. And they just survive it and it's awesome. So it feels like they're using their powers to survive versus instead what they're doing here is doing this roar, which takes away their resistance. And now it feels like the DM's taking away power that they have in order to do damage. I would just rather up the damage. What do you guys think of that?
You make a good point.
Yeah, because the elemental roar basically gives them a save, or else they are vulnerable to fire. And if they're resistance, it's gone. So.
Yeah, I think there was definitely more interesting stuff to do with the Doom than that.
For sure.
I don't know that I like recharging so quickly. If you're going to have it recharge basically every other round, it's such a powerful attack. I'd say why not just let them do it optionally, on any round. Why bother with the recharge at all if it's going to be 4 to 6?
Yeah. Now, and if you did that, I'd keep it a little bit. I'd keep the damage low like this.
Yeah.
Because this damage about approximates all the rest of the damage they could do in a round.
Right.
Yeah. But if it's 5 to 6, I would love to see more damage here. So a CR 18 creature should be doing in a round per the DMG 114 damage a round, and they don't get close to that. They do one more change. The wing attack doesn't cost 2 actions anymore. It's just 1 legendary. So they're doing that 3 times a round. And I include that to see if they got their damage up to match, and it still was below what it should have been. Yeah. So they're beefing them up a little bit. And it's so hard to say, hey, we've been playing D&D 10 years. The monsters aren't challenging. They need to be more challenging. Yeah, but people who have been playing it for 1 day, they don't need to be more challenging.
Right. I've run those tables, and they're plenty challenging for people who've been playing 1 day.
Yeah, that's why I think you need to dial. You need a dial for the DM in there built in. Okay, so that's the red dragon. As I'm skipping through, if you have anything you want to point out.
I'd like to look at the goblin.
Yeah, let's talk goblin.
I want to call out the ghoul a little bit later.
Goblin. Here we go with goblin. Take it away, Dave.
Well, I'm loving this new goblin. It is so shifty with its reactions, and I can't read it from here, but but it really gives a great feel for a sort of a shifty, cunning goblin that's going to be frustrating on the battlefield, but also really projects a flavor of what it means to fight a goblin as opposed to some other one-hit die creature out there. And I want to give this design a star for how pleasing actions like nimble escape with the disengage or hide action as a bonus, and frantic reflexes. When it's hit or missed, it can stand up from being prone or move up to 10 feet without provoking an opportunity attack. It just feels different, and it feels like a goblin to me.
Its damage is right on for its CR. Its hit points are higher again. They used to be 7, now they're 9.
Mm-hmm.
Stealth is a little weaker.
Which you'd think it would be better based on size, right?
Yeah, what they did is goblins used to be experts basically in stealth, so got double their proficiency bonus added to their dex for 6. And in this version, they made them not experts. So they're getting 4 plus 1 for size, 5, 15.
Yeah, the 2014 goblin, if you wanted to TPK your party and run them as crafty killers who are attacking from range, hiding between attacks, you could definitely do it, and you could really punish a party but I'm not sure that's a particularly fun encounter to run. This goblin feels like you can run it and use its abilities and maybe not kill the whole party.
All right, let's look at ghouls. Oh, did I pass ghoul already?
Yeah.
Ghoul, there we go. Okay.
Okay, now I don't have a lot to say about the ghoul, but I wrote an adventure recently where ghouls were adversaries. I love ghouls as adversaries. And in this adventure, the ghouls erupt from the floor underneath the players. And I was really hoping that ghouls had a climb speed. And I kept looking at my DMG over and over again, seeing if I overlooked the climb speed, because it felt like a flavorful thing for ghouls to be doing, climbing on the walls, climbing on the ceilings. We've all seen that horror scene where ghouls or similar undead do that kind of thing. So I'm totally delighted to see ghouls in this system get a climb speed and spider climb.
And doesn't the first edition DMG have a sample dungeon with ghouls that are up near the ceiling? I think it does.
I don't remember.
So I think that's a repressed memory, Dave, from your first edition days.
Could be, but I'm thumbs up to the design team
Yeah.
for the ghouls.
I picked that out, spider climb being new. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I wonder if they remember that sample. If I can pick it up during this broadcast, I'll find it. I don't have the DMG though in electronic format, so not the first edition one. Okay, claws. They're doing 9 damage, and so with their claws, still the con save went up.
Yeah,
13 versus 10, or be paralyzed.
that makes them a lot more dangerous in my reckoning.
Yeah, absolutely. And then their bite, the attack bonus went up a little bit. The damage used to be 9, but now it's 3. But now you're going to get a disease and get ghoul hunger.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. All right. Now, what do we got next?
Yeah, that ghoul hunger is going to be super interesting.
Oh, let's go back and look at
The paralyzed effect in the original one
that.
is always, again, like stunned. It's a real boner killer for the players.
Yeah.
To use the technical term. But this, it doesn't take them out of the fight. It doesn't, eat up actions and stuff like that, but it's going to make them really dangerous to us, to the party for a while, give some role-playing fun to have. But only a wish spell or divine intervention can reverse the transformation. That's gruesome.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I don't know about the ghouls climbing on the ceiling in the example from the first edition DMG, but there is a scene in that example where a lone character scouts ahead and gets paralyzed by ghouls and dragged off to likely doom. And I remember talking to some folks saying how unsettling they found that scene. So the ghoul paralysis, as much as it's a downer, is sort of iconic.
Yeah.
You talk about a phobia, though, being paralyzed against a monster. Definitely. Okay. Let's see here. If there's any others you want to go back and look at, I just picked up the orc. So the orc is a CR 1/2 monster, so should have been good with damage originally. Shouldn't need to beef it up too much at all. It's got 22 hit points versus 15, and it's got this relentless, so its 22 hit points just became a lot more because the first time you drop it, it doesn't drop. So on average, it's probably got more like 25 or hit points or so, or more. Otherwise, all the same. Its damage, I think, is actually right on. A CR 1/2 actually is doing more damage than average already, but they didn't change it, so that's good. All right, Owlbear. It feels like they watched the D&D movie when they made this owlbear.
Good for them.
Bursting from the forest undergrowth, it charges. Okay, its armor class went up slightly. Hit points went up significantly, 59 to 97. Stealth changed because of its size. All the stats are the same. Its heightened senses are built into its passive perception. So it's kind of nice having that kind of built in because, you know, before it had +3 and you'd have to remember, oh, I have advantage on that though. So passively it's going to be better. Okay, then its actions. So a CR, and they kept the CR the same, I think. CR3, yeah. CR3 monsters should be doing an average of 24 damage a round. And this one's a little weak, doing 20 a round with its 2 main attacks. It does grapple at both. That makes it stronger in it slightly. And the rend is an auto hit for 21 if it has grappled. So that's real strong. And also it's got a triggering ability, like you talked about, Dave. 44 hit points or fewer, so bloodied, it can do all this extra attack here. So overall, good flavor, I think. Again, the damage isn't really up there like you would expect them beefing up all damage, but it's pretty cool changes.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of what I like about these monster descriptions, because if you look at that owl bear on the left from 2014, not much of it says owl bear as far as flavor. It's just a package of hit points and attacks.
Yeah.
Whereas the owl bear on the right, it's got some abilities, that bear hug and the crash through ability, that suggest that this is an owl bear you're fighting, and more than a bag of hit points.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I think they could turn it up a little bit more using Doom. And again, steal some stuff from the movie, because there's iconic stuff about the way the owlbear in the movie fought, grabbing people, smashing them into the ground, tossing them around. And what we get here is rend, which is cool, but I mean, we could reflavor that as you know, knock prone and bash into the earth or something.
We need
like
hurl.
Yeah. We need a couple of things in there, and maybe, you know, maybe there's in a future monster book with this stuff in it, there's a set of Doom abilities that you can use that sort of fit any monster, you know, so like hurl, or because lots of things might toss somebody, lots of things might grab somebody, even if they don't normally grapple.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So you could just build out a whole ton of, or you know, like a page or two of possible Doom maneuvers or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's a way to really flavor up combat based on the situation, especially if you're taking advantage of a crit fail that a player made.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so speaking of Doom, here's a purple worm, which has got Doom power. So immune to prone, that's a new thing. Kind of makes sense. Its saving throws are missing. Its con went up a point, but it could have had a +11 on a con save. Its wisdom, inexplicably, purple worms were very good at resisting wisdom saves. That's gone. Doom, they have 3. I don't know how they determine which monsters have 1, 2, and 3. Seems to go with challenge rating a little bit. Its damage is kind of close to being correct. For a CR15, it should be doing 96 points of damage, and it gets real close there with its base damage. And then, but it also has this thrash power, which will do damage to everyone nearby, 87 bludgeoning. So that's pretty strong.
That's going to sting.
Yeah. And then rapid digestion. So if you get swallowed, it's digesting you faster and getting hit points back. So that's pretty fun stuff.
There are a few things that happen in D&D combat that are more lively at the table than A, somebody jumping on the monster, and B, somebody getting swallowed by the monster. So
Yeah.
I'm
This is the first time I can remember seeing a monster that swallows a target actually gain hit points from having them in their stomach.
Right?
Exactly. I
Yeah,
love it.
I've never seen that before.
That's cool. That's nasty as hell. Because especially if you're on your own in that monster's stomach and all you have is a dagger to cut your way out,
Yeah,
and
you'll
it's
never get out.
regaining.
Yeah.
Never gonna.
Oh man. Okay, that's purple worm. Oh, skeleton. That's a good baseline creature. Skeleton. Compare that to skeletons. So I think maybe beefed up a little too much. You like to throw these in kind of numbers at a low level party. Hit point went up from 13 up to 19. Speed's a little faster. Stealth is better. Resistance to piercing now, which is better. More immunities, including stunned. Night vision, and that must be a typo. 320 feet. Silent Sentinels. So their damage is about right, but then they have the reaction of counterattack, which makes it too high damage for CR1 quarter. So I think they maybe beefed it up too much, and that's kind of across the board on all their challenge rating 1/2 and 1/4 monsters. I think I like these little extra things, but be cautious at low levels.
Yeah, that's gonna be. I mean, my skeletons to me feel like a monster that should go down with one hit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, what, 19 hit points? It's going to take 3 hits for a first level party to take that guy down.
And your archer's not doing much help with the piercing resistance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The niche for low level monsters who low level undead,
Especially
that are hard to kill, is filled by zombies. So
Right.
Yeah. Oh, let's get to that, because
and
they made that
zombies
even harder to kill.
get some fun changes.
Yeah, they made them even harder to kill, I think. We'll come back to troll. Let's look at zombie. And compared to the zombies. All right, so they gained exhaustion immunity. I don't know that that's ever come up. A little bit better strength, a little bit better con. Wisdom's the same. They lost their wisdom save. Damage. Their damage is slightly less on the die. 3 instead of 4, but they grapple.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this festering bite on a grappled creature. So they're going to be doing more damage than before. Interestingly, didn't change their hit points at all.
Well, they didn't need it. They've got the save on 0.
Yeah,
that
too.
But the festering bite I'm really enjoying, because that's sort of the iconic George Romero monster movie zombie threat. So it's kind of fun to see it show up in D&D.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I love the other thing, because grappling zombies, there was it was like, I think Shadows over Bogenhaven or something like that in the first edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. There was an encounter in that campaign where the characters are just dropped into a room full of zombies, and the zombies just grab onto them. And with that many attempts to grab, everybody's surrounded, and the zombies are all making grapple checks on you and just trying to hold you down. If you put a bunch of zombies against somebody and they can just hold you down and gnaw on you, now we would want to be able to turn up grappled to restrained, maybe with when 2 have you grappled or something like that. But that could be really terrifying and really thematic.
Yes, I love that.
Now, is this a CR1 quarter creature when it turns party members into more enemies? I don't
I'm
think
going to
so.
say maybe not. Yeah.
It might need to go up a couple on the court. I like that. I like that power, but it's going to wreck a low level party.
The thing that makes that, I mean, so this is about being able to play the monsters smart. That speed of 20 is the thing that makes them avoidable.
Mm-hmm.
If you're smart and can, kite them and stuff like that, they're not hard to take down. But a party that solves all problems by running in and hitting them over the head is going to struggle with those zombies.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yep. All right, let's go back and look at iconic monster here, the troll. Table contents. Okay, troll. Hit points went up about 20 or so. Stealth is just about what you'd expect given their size. Vulnerability to fire, so that's new. It makes sense, but definitely new. And Radiant, stopping the regeneration, is new. So that makes those two things make them take away those extra hit points they got pretty quick, I think.
Yeah.
And then their actions, their damage was a little low, but then they have some things they added here that get it over the top. So I feel like a lot of their extra actions were to make up the difference on the damage the monster did. And I think they hit it on a number of them. Some of them they missed it, and they just need to kind of recheck that stuff. I'm happy with just doing more damage. I think a lot of these things are cool, but
It
nothing
feels like
scares.
it's intended to be a reaction, not a bonus action.
Troll moves up to its speed and makes a single melee attack and creature within range. Well, they can do it every round. Every round they're at below 72 hit points, they basically get another attack.
And an extra move.
And move, yeah.
An extra move and attack every round. That's a scary ass ability.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And they make their bite attack with advantage if they hit with both claws. And they wound with their bite. Kind of like a bearded devil. Yeah, exactly like a bearded devil. Almost. Close, at least.
My sense is that trolls in the 2014 edition do not hit at their weight class or their CR level. So it's probably not so bad to see a little bit more of a bite there.
Yeah, they should be doing 36 damage, and they're doing, let's see, 2 claws, 22, and 728. So yeah, they're down by 8 for the DMG.
I'm happy to see the stone skin troll variant for those of us who, for folks who prefer their trolls inspired by Tolkien rather than Anderson. So there you got that option there. That's kind of nice.
That is cool. All right, then. Okay, we get to some NPC stat blocks. Just a couple more low-level ones I noted that get more powers that might make them kind of dangerous for their low level. Let's see, let's go to the player's handbook. Non-player characters. The bandit's getting, I mean, that's not too bad. And it's kind of flavorful, right? Moving around without provoking attacks, twice per rest. Their damage is about right on, I think. Yeah, +3 for 5, for 4, for 5, so slightly different, not bad. So that's pretty cool, and that's kind of flavorful. Then the cultists we come to, they get better armor class, same hit points, resistance to charm and frighten. So this is where we see, that's the first time I've seen resistance to a condition to show up in a stat block that we looked at.
Interesting.
It's similar to what they used to have, which was advantage to charmed and frightened from their dark devotion. So they took what was like a niche feature, and they turned it into something they can just add to every monster.
Yeah.
Simply and quickly, and the DM won't forget it. Because you can forget, the things down below a little easier than you can up here, I think. So that's good. I think I like that. And then, okay, so their inhuman vitality. Once per day, gain 2 temporary hit points for each cultist, fiend, or aberration within 10 feet of it. So don't throw, 5 or 6 cultists at a party. They'll have, if it was 5, they'd have 10. So 19 hit points each. That can get out of hand real fast. They should probably rework that a little bit. And their charisma's better, their wisdom's better. They used to have a deception skill, so that gets their deception skill back. They used to have a religion skill, and that is just gone, kind of. Unless you know to add the proficiency bonus. That's all I had to look at. You guys have anything else to specifically look at?
No, we covered
Not specifically. I would have liked to have seen some spell casting NPCs. There is one sort of cult leader, I think, in there. But
like here's the mage. Let's look at the mage. I think that I took a quick peek, and it looked like they were the same spells, basically. So the hit points of the mage went up. Definitely. Anyone knows a single mage against the party is not going to last around.
No.
Yeah.
And still at 54, they won't last around.
Yeah, it's not.
They need NPCs to help block.
It's interesting that they've chosen to include those spells that are not likely to come up in combat, but that may reinforce the flavor of a NPC mage like Detect Magic or, well, that's about it
That's
in this
about it.
list.
Let's see, Mirror Image is new. And Counterspell is gone. I wonder if they're getting rid of Counterspell.
No, they may be.
Or maybe just deciding it's not particularly fun to have it with a mage at this tier.
It's the right choice for a mage, but not the fun choice necessarily.
Yeah.
Should we take a minute and look at some of the stuff that I think is original in this that isn't based on? Because like, the first one I noticed was Crimson Jelly.
Okay, let's take a look at that one.
Because I don't remember seeing that before. And the Husk Demon, which you just scrolled past, which is also, I don't remember.
Crimson Jelly, here we go.
And this, we're really just looking for flavor and stuff like that. It's as a relatively, again, half a CR.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of hit points, but it's got a bunch of cool abilities. Something like regenerating 3 hit points at the start of its turn. That's so fiddly.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I just adding? I mean, I get it, but
so you can't kill it unless you do fire or radiant damage.
Right.
So that's yeah.
The transparency is cool.
Creature reduces 0 hit points by the must succeed on its save or gain 1 level of exhaustion.
And it's gaining temporary hit points every time it hits you. This is a mean ass monster.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for CR 1/2.
And especially if you play them as doing things like attacking light sources and things like that, so that they can go back to being transparent.
Fly speed of 90 and hover, so they can
easy fast.
Yeah, is this what tags does this have? Tiny Ooze. Or tiny, stealth of 15. Keen of 10 feet. That's weird.
Oh wow.
I always find that odd that a creature, so if they're 50 feet away from you, they don't know you're there. It's like, how do you play that as a DM? Can they really it says they can't sense beyond this radius, so that doesn't make sense, right?
Are they talking about sense in a technical game sense, as otherwise
make a perception
beyond that radius they count as blinded?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It used to say it used to be blind sight 10 feet, blind beyond this radius. Of course, that didn't make sense because a lot of creatures that have blind sight 10 feet didn't even have eyes. So this makes sense to change it to keen. And
I think they need to work on this terminology.
Yeah.
But how is it only able to sense out 10 feet but move 90?
Right. Yeah.
It's just flying around
with great speed. It senses your presence. You must have been real close to it. It rushes toward you with plenty of speed. Closes that 10-foot gap faster than you can count.
Yeah, that makes no sense at all.
Yeah. Demon, Husk Demon. Look at this guy. Formless pile of desiccated hide and broken scale. Speed of 40, fly 25, CR 4. A lot of actions, it's got Doom. Yeah, this guy's got a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if he did a regular round. So say you're DM trying to just pick this up and run it. I'd go look at the well, what would I do? I would try to quickly look at these. You don't want there to be too many of these.
Right.
The DM in theory needs to keep these going every time. So I need to know he has a Doom point. He can enter a hostile space and stop. Void absorption when the Husk would make void damage. It takes no damage. Instead regains number of hit points equal to the void damage dealt. And it says immune void there. A flag there would be nice to remind us for the void absorption. Multi-attack. 2 void drain attacks. +7. 6 slashing. 8 void. Maximum reduced by the void damage taken. Ooh, no save on that? Normally that has a save. You know, when undead do that same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a little powerful. Regains hit points equal to the amount. Lasts until the target finishes a long rest. Yeah, so it's the same as undead, but with no save. That's really strong. You're taking, if you get hit twice, you're taking 16 off your max, and it's a CR4 creature, so you're fighting it at, fourth level maybe.
That soul feed ability next is also really strong.
3 times per day. Okay, so I can do 2 void drains, or I can soul feed 3 times per day. Drains life from creatures around it. First feed, slowed. Level of exhaustion. or 3. Fail. I don't recall if they changed exhaustion in this playtest to be the 10 levels like they did in the D&D playtest, but 3 is enormous amount.
We haven't seen that sort of rule in this.
Yeah, I don't think we have. Third feed takes 18 necrotic and is stunned until. Yeah.
So here's the thing with soul feed, though, and it's, what's not. I think this is more interesting if it's the husk demon does the ability, and if you're exposed to it the first time, it does one thing, and so it's not the inherent power, but the number of times you're exposed to it. Am I making sense? Because like, it's one thing if its soul feed gets stronger each time it uses it, but it feels like it would make more sense if the characters who are exposed to it more often suffer bigger effects. So the first time you're affected, you're slowed. The second time you're affected, you're exhausted. The third time you're necrotic and stunned. So that tank who's up there to handle this thing is getting really mangled.
Right. You could have a cool tactical dynamic with that kind of ability. In addition to a rising sense of peril, which is always fun.
Right.
For me as a DM, I don't know about the players, but
it would be more difficult to track. But other than that,
yeah.
All right. What else we got in here? Dragons.
The Void Dragon was a new variant.
Okay, so Void's like psychic, I think.
Yeah.
Formed of the night sky, bright white stars for eyes, lesser stars twinkle in the firmament of the dragon's body. That's cool. Do they have just young? Yeah, just young. Okay, so a young void dragon, CR9, resistant to cold, don't have resistance to cold dealt by the dragon, so they're ignoring the cold resistance, which just up their damage on their breath weapon.
Yeah.
It feels less cool to the player to just have their powers taken away randomly. Still immune to good range damage, expert avoid travel. Okay, 1 bite, 1 claws, +9 for 16, +9 for 12. So that's real basic. Breath weapon 5 and 6 instead of the 4 through 6 like the red dragon was. I wonder if there are young red dragons only 5 through 6. Young red dragon. Yeah, they go to 4 to 6 when they go to adult. Interesting. Oh, and it's got 2 types of breath, like a metallic dragon would have.
Right.
That's cool. 21 fire, 20. Well, that's interesting. What damage does it do? That's cold damage. Oh, it's bite. Okay. But it's doing fire and radiant otherwise, so like a star breath. That's cool. It's got like a parry for 4. So lots of neat ideas here, I think. Lots of neat different little powers and such. It's got to be a tough thing for this company, because they're basically just making D&D with some little tweaks.
Right. I'm interested in the math changes they're doing. Have they said anything in the blogs about the math behind the stuff that they're doing, some of these changes, or is it really just because it feels like they're eyeballing it?
Good question. Do they have a table they're shooting at? That'd be a good question to ask. I've reached out to the lead designer, Celeste Konowich, I think. We'll see if she wants to be on as a guest, and we can ask those kind of questions. That'd be great to have her on.
Yeah, I do know that Kobold has a lot of experience, perhaps more experience even than Wizards of the Coast,
Yeah.
at designing monsters and matching them to, you know, CR levels and so on. So
Yeah.
I think they bring a lot of experience to this particular challenge. It is curious to me that I don't see, well, we haven't looked at a lot of higher level monsters. I'd love to see something like a Baylor or a Pit Fiend, but we don't see whether those sorts of monsters really ramp up in the damage output, the sort of thing that folks like me have been asking to see, because current 2014 monsters just can't challenge
Well, the Red
high level
Dragon,
characters.
you know, they have the Red Dragon, and it doesn't really ramp up the damage. It's
No.
about the same as it was before. They have this one extra elemental reward thing that can take away resistance, that can help the breath weapon. The tail strike can be one more time around. So yeah, there's not like a big ramp up. I mean, when I run for a real experienced party, this would be 150% of this damage or 160% of this damage, and the party does fine.
Yep, it's true.
So, but it is a balancing act, because a new party wouldn't do fine. They'd be torn to shreds.
Absolutely true.
They wouldn't have the Death Awards going. They wouldn't have, you know, all the other things going.
And I'm very pleased to see the abilities that amplify the unique character of a lot of these monsters. I'd love to see those kind of things in 1D&D. But of course, the magic is that as a dungeon master, if you like the owl bear here better than the owl bear that you're using at your table, you can just take this one and use it instead.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so there's not going to be any live show next week. I've reached out to, let's see here. Oh, let's look at some websites I have. Where did I put those? Oh, there's Nave. Okay. So I've reached out to Ben Milton, who's doing the Nave Kickstarter right now. See if he'll be a guest. I haven't heard back on that. Andrew wants to be a guest here when he has a chance. And Andrew is a real prolific author in the AL community, in DM Guild and such, and was the God, what year was that? There was a competition held for the best dungeon master, and he won that competition.
Nice.
Yeah. The Tales of the Valiant website is live, and they have information. Their Kickstarters are going to go up. Gosh, it's like in a couple days. So we'll see how this one takes off. They certainly got the production value on this website, that's for sure. You can see a monster book, a player's book. There's going to be plenty of play testing. They're going to be at Gen Con. They talk about Gen Con live community playtesting. Signups coming soon. Playtest packets. We just looked at Playtest Packet 3. Design diaries. We probably should have all done our homework and read this design diary here. That's some great artwork, though. That Gelatinous Cube is awesome. Really good. Let's see what they say about the owlbear. Low CR hit points. Dave, you read this, didn't you?
Yes, that's what I read, and that's what I was
did your
referencing. And I was a little puzzled because that's not something that I've been tuned into.
Yeah. Well, that's why we keep having you back, Dave, because you always do your homework.
Why am I here?
That's
comic relief. It's nice to have the slow kid class too.
Yeah. Flat damage, they have the most obvious change. Okay. I'm going to read up on that. That's it for me, guys. Got anything else?
Nope.
That's all, folks.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you all later.